So this is just astonishing to me. Douglas Murray here is in conversation with Jordan Peterson. And Douglas, as far as I know, up until now, has been a self-described atheist who has a lot of respect for the quote-unquote Judeo-Christian heritage that the West has. But he is a secularist, it seems. And yet, here he is, talking to Jordan Peterson about his latest book on democracies and death cults, where he talks about Israel's war against Hamas, and he recognizes actually one of the things he's learned is that there really is such a thing as good and evil. He sees evil in Hamas, but he also believes in good. And I've heard him quote now a bunch of times biblical scriptures, the Torah in particular. And here he does quoting it again, this time noting the irony that the United Nations has on their wall in New York. Where does it get its vision for peace from? From Isaiah, which says, "Nation shall not lift sword against nation." And he points out something fascinating there, which I think is so remarkable, especially coming from Douglas. Have a watch of this discussion he has with Jordan, because I find it really quite remarkable.
And, I would just add one other thing to that, which is I was talking the other day with a friend, a biblical scholar, and he said, that famous quote on the walls of the UN, the quote from Isaiah, "And he shall judge among the nations, and he shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." Now that's a magnificent sentiment, of course, and who wouldn't want to follow it? But the thing that I just realized is, look at what comes before it. "Let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem."
Right. That's called a precondition, Douglas.
You don't get the idea of war being no more, or peace breaking out among nations, unless the word goes out from Jerusalem.
Yeah.
You can have one, but you can't have it without the other.
That's right. Yeah. All right.
That is the most remarkable conclusion to this interview. And bear in mind, Douglas Murray, as I said, don't know how he feels today theologically, spiritually, but I know historically he has described himself as an atheist. Jordan Peterson, a Christian. And there's a few things that I want to take away from this that I think are so important, so remarkable. First of all, note the irony. Note the irony that the United Nations, that is obsessed with critiquing Israel, morally bashing Israel on their high horses, singling out Israel, saying you're breaking, humanitarian law, you need to be better at achieving and working towards peace. They themselves know that the custodians of morality that first articulated this vision of world peace as an ideal comes from the Jewish people, comes from Israel. See, how ironic that even they know that really Israel aren't the students in the morality classroom. Israel are the teachers, or meant to be the teachers. Secondly, it's remarkable, as I say, to have someone like Douglas and who's acknowledging this and saying this. And if you watch earlier in the interview, and I'll put a link to that in the description, you'll see how he's acknowledging that in Israel, you have higher birth rates, for example, than in other European countries where they're trying to incentivize it with, let's say, tax incentives. But he's saying the reason it's higher in Israel, even in secular Tel Aviv, quote unquote, is because it's not just an economic thing for them. It's a sense of duty, moral obligation, divine commandment. That this is our job, this is our duty, to procreate, to have more children, to bring more life into this world. But what's remarkable here is that it sort of shows that anyone that delves into Israel's and the Jewish people's story, history, current circumstances, you really delve into it in depth with an honest, objective approach, as Douglas has, you cannot help but notice the miraculous, the transcendent, the divine in the Jewish people's story, which I think Douglas, if he were honest with himself, which I'm sure he is probably coming to acknowledge and see more and more. He's also seeing it among the Jewish people, where they have this, if he acknowledges there's evil in this world, such as embodied by Hamas and what they did and are doing, he sees an equal, if not even stronger, more powerful force, opposite force, for good among Israel in their fighting for life against a cause that is a death cult fighting for death. And within that, you can see the good that is combating the evil. Two forces that I think are hard to fully explain or articulate through simple materialist definitions and descriptions. But the third thing that he said that I just find so remarkable here, and I actually hadn't really considered before, is that they're acknowledging and saying that actually, perhaps the UN put this up inadvertently without considering the previous verses. But think about what they're acknowledging, what Isaiah was saying here, and think about what it is saying, what the prophet was saying. And think about the fact that the United Nations actually having this text on their wall. What was Isaiah saying? He's saying that the way there's going to be peace, the precondition, as Jordan Peterson puts it, is when Ki metzion tetzei Torah u'devar Hashem mirushalayim. Out of Zion will go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. The United Nations, which so often bashes Israel's very right to be, bashes Zionism, they themselves have acknowledged that what will lead to peace? When the Jewish people and Israel are the moral teachers of humanity, and the world listens to them and abides by them. And through that precondition, there will be peace. And Jordan, a Christian, and Douglas Murray, a historically self-described atheist, are acknowledging that. They're leaning into that. And I'll tell you what, this actually, I hadn't even really considered this before, is actually telling us what the ultimate solution is going to be to producing world peace, to bringing the world to its perfection, to its healing. This is what's going to stop the animosity and hostility towards Israel. When Israel finally stands up in the classroom of humanity, in the United Nations itself, and its leaders say and pronounce, okay, everybody, we know you've had suspicions about us for a while. We know as much as we try to be treated just like all of you, you insist on treating us differently because you sense there is something different about us. Okay, you know what? We'll admit it. We are different. There is something different about us. Because 3,300 years ago, God appeared to us, revealed himself to us as a nation. Not just one individual as every other religion claims. He came to us as a nation, a unique historical claim that cannot really be fraudulent because no one else has been able to succeed in making such a claim. And he told us his will, his commandments, his need for the kind of world he wants to see. And he asked us to be the teachers of that vision, given to us in his Torah, to the whole world. So yes, we are different in the sense that he has asked us to be the teachers in the classroom. So we are finally ready to be those teachers. We are not a nation like all others, and we'll stop insisting that you treat us like all others. Our right to be in the land of Israel comes not from the United Nations, not from international law, not from historical reasons, not for even indigenous reasons. It comes from divine right, divine grant, an eternal inheritance that the God of Israel gave to the Jewish people. And with that inheritance, he asked us to use this land and our voice to be a nation of priests and a holy nation. And so, if you're ready to listen, after thousands of years of kicking and screaming, we are ready to come and teach. Because if you really do want that vision on that wall in the United Nations, that vision of world peace, where we beat our swords into, I think plows is the word, and their spears into pruning hooks. Well, the way that's going to happen is if we listen to the word of the Lord. Remarkable, remarkable stuff. and definitely strong food for thought.
Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.